We're going to be talking about a variety of transportation projects that are in process or coming up, and your input, the work that we're doing to help platform community voice is the reason we're doing this kickoff right now. So your presence speaks to that desire to be working with us, with municipalities and other agencies, and continuing to build great places for the people in the Twin Ports. Places where we connect, where we grow, where we can support local and vital economies. And we're going to hear how we can do just that in several local street projects right now. Our program here in the Teatro is an opportunity to hear about upcoming and current transportation projects that can transform our community, including the screening, the premiere screening of the Safer 6th Avenue East documentary that we put together. So this is our sharing out portion with you all, and after the program we're going to have time in the atrium for conversation, highlighting also the work of UMD's students in the City as a Work of Art class. They focused this semester on design ideas for 6th Avenue East. So those easels and displays out there, please talk to the students about their work and ideas as well. To start off, I'm going to introduce someone who has been dedicated to public service, platforming community vision through arts and storytelling, and driving policy, systems, and environmental change for many decades, our Executive Director, Tony Cuneo.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. My name is Tony Cuneo. I'm the Executive Director here at the Zeitgeist Center for Arts and Community, and really excited to have you all here. We have a very fundamental belief here at Zeitgeist, and that is we are a stronger community when we are connected, when we are creative, and when we are engaged. And by stronger, that means we are more able to solve community issues. We are more willing to work on each other's behalf, regardless of whether we're from different neighborhoods or different demographic backgrounds. It means that we are healthy, we're happy, our lives are more fulfilling. And I think that that's, those are ideas, right, that all of us can get on board with. We want it not just for ourselves, but for everybody in this community. And so what keeps us from achieving those? Well, we often think about it as disengagement, lack of trust in civic, cultural, or community institutions or processes. And we know that there are social systems, discrimination, racism, poverty, fear of others, that keep some people out. And so at Zeitgeist, we're always thinking about how do we overcome those barriers? And how do we build connections? How do we recatalyze engagement? And for us, within the walls of this building, sometimes it may not be totally obvious, but you may have a sense, right? That within the walls of this building, we are always thinking about how do we tell stories that are undertold? How do we give people an opportunity to find common ground through stories and artistic experiences and creative expression? And but we also know, well, we do that because we know two things. One, we know that when people have a venue to share their experience, when they have a venue to share their stories and their perspectives, or they see someone that reflects them sharing their stories or their perspectives, that they feel a greater sense of connection to the community that they are a part of. And we also know, too, that there is no better way of building a new connection between people, of knocking down those barriers of discrimination, than understanding somebody else's tale and connecting with them on that personal level. And so, we do that within the walls of this building in every way that we can think of doing it. But we also know that if we want to have the kind of impact that we want to have in our community, we can't just expect people to come to us and engage in programming here inside the walls of Zeitgeist. We need to get out into the community and build relationships and get to know the neighborhoods that surround our building, that are part of the community that we here at Zeitgeist share. And that's what today is all about. is about the work of our community team going out and gathering the stories of our community members, because we know that ultimately city policy is based on our shared understanding of the stories of our community residents. And if we don't understand those stories, if we don't hear those stories, our policy will reflect them. And we think in Duluth, as in anywhere in this country, our policies do reflect a lack of historically understanding or empathizing with or connecting with the stories of all of our people. And so I want to say a big thank you to all the speakers that are here today for taking the time to share your perspectives, to gather the stories of all the members of our community and talk about how those stories make an impact on who we are as a community through our policy decisions, through our physical infrastructure. And it's not just about any one street, although today we will spend a lot of time talking about one or two streets in particular. But it's really about a process. It's about approach. It's about an identity of our community and integrating the stories of all our people into those policy decisions and into our approaches. A big part of that is getting to interact with our policymakers one-on-one and hear their background, hear where they're coming from. And so, without further ado, I want to welcome Mayor Larson, who I think is the next person on our agenda. But let me say thank you to all of our speakers today, and in particular thank you to Mayor Payne and Mayor Larson for making your time to be here and connecting with people and helping to build that trust in community institutions and civic processes just by being here and being accessible to our community. So thank you for always being supportive of this event, to both of you, and let's please welcome Mayor Larson.
Quick housekeeping. Am I introducing Mayor Payne? You are. Okay. Okay. Just right. Great. There's more seats. Come on in if you'd like to. Welcome everybody. It's great to have you here. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Zeitgeist. Thank you to the amazing community that is Duluth Superior, who work together so well and really challenge each other beautifully on the things that are important. It's really, one of the things I love about these events is just showing up and listening. So we've been given some time to speak today, and I'm actually going to be fairly brief because I'm here to listen and I'm here to learn. I want to thank the city staff who are here. You will hear from James in a few minutes. We also have Phil and Brianna here and probably other staff as well, and so thank you for that. This is actually, the movie we're going to see is My Neighborhood. I am a Hillsider, and so I think about this intersection that we're going to be seeing, the film about the 6th and 4th, really often because I'm driving it all the time, I'm experiencing it all the time. I know what is problematic about it, about how it feels, about the sidewalks being up against the street, about the lack of tree cover, the connectivity, the speed. It's deeply problematic. And so I want to thank this community who has challenged us and continues to challenge us to be a pedestrian and transportation corridor that really matches the values of this community. And so I do think you're going to hear a little bit about how the city of Duluth is going to be doing that on 6th Avenue East with you, with community, and in strong partnership and leadership of Zeitgeist. So thank you for that. I grew up in St. Paul, which is not where I live currently, despite rumors. I live by this street here. But when I grew up, transportation was on our own, right? So I needed to take the city bus places or I needed to bike places. And when I got to have a driver's license, we didn't have an extra car in my house, so it wasn't really a common experience that I would drive my friends or I would drive to go places. And so I think about that a lot too, because that is not the norm we experience here in Duluth. There does seem to be a mental shift in expectation of how we get around. And I know a big part of that is the built environment that we have created. And it is hilly, and there are challenges, and there is snow. But I do think about how that changes the way that you see your neighborhood. When you're biking through neighborhoods, you see them differently. When you're walking through neighborhoods, you interact with people differently. When you're not just blasting down to get somewhere as fast as you possibly can, but actually enjoying the ride or enjoying the process, you see your community really differently. And so I'm here to learn more about that. And then finally, I just want to say that I door knock. It's part of what I do. And I love to do it. But I want to tell you this one story that I started door knocking this year in January. And it was right after a really bad snowstorm. Like seriously, it was bad. One of the many we had. But at any rate, I thought to myself, oh shit, excuse me. Sorry. Woo, thank you, Mayor Jim. Okay, that's a challenge for you. But I was like, oh God, I know exactly what I'm going to hear on the doors today. And also, you still go out on the doors, right? You still go out to hear what people have to say. So I walked up to this door, and it was in Norton Park, I think. It was in Norton Park. And I literally had to crawl over a snowbank to get to this person's door. And I knock on it, and I'm like prepared, right, to hear the snow complaints. And here's what she said to me. She talked about lead lines. She talked about the fact that her neighbor needs childcare. She talked about the bus route. She talked about parks. I'm telling you this because sometimes when we slow down and ask the question to hear the story, you hear the actual story. It doesn't mean the other things aren't true. But if I were to gauge what that person would have said to me based on Facebook that morning, or based on comments on some venue, or whatever, next door, whatever, it would never have been that story. It would never have been that human telling of here's what my life is like in this community. And so that's the work that I get excited about with Zeitgeist, is that we're here to actually ask the question and then hear the actual answer. And it doesn't mean that the other pieces aren't important or that we can't pay attention to it, but it does mean that when we ask the question and we show up in a meaningful way and people can feel that, they will tell us where they're at. And so, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. So thank you for all of this. And Mayor Payne and I were just celebrating preemptively that we believe the NLX is getting fully funded. Woo! So I said it, I meant it, but I can't guarantee it yet because session still has 2 more days. But all good stuff and excited about all that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Larson. And yes, if you're in the back entry, come on up. We've got chairs around here. You're welcome to come up as we're chatting here. Mayor Larson, you, your staff, other city councilors have continued to listen and show up for these conversations, and we're so grateful for that. That leadership and listening is what is desperately needed to make some of these changes we're going to be talking about. Our next speaker is no stranger to walking, busing, or biking, or managing the infrastructure needed to do that. It's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Jim Payne.
I don't do spotlights so often anymore. This is great. Well, shit. We get to talk a little bit differently over in Superior, and so I usually revel in using my full vocabulary when I'm in Duluth. I don't get to talk to Duluth audiences that often. I always enjoy getting to speak with Mayor Larson and sharing our joint vision for the Twin Ports, but I wanted to use today to talk about just a couple things. There's so much I want to say, but I'll narrow it down about what my vision has always been for city building, or I guess it hasn't always been there, how I got there, and some of the projects we're doing in Superior. And then I'll end with 2 leaders that really informed how I think streets should be designed and managed. Those 2 leaders are Julius Caesar and James Getmeyer. And I'll get there. So I am a progressive, I am a Democrat, I'm an environmentalist. I've had a lot of these values since I was very, very young. And it was often hard because I never really wanted to be in politics. I always really enjoyed my home. And it's something that it was kind of weird when I was a kid, bragging about my little city up north, and it got a lot of eye rolls when I served in the Marines. Nobody knew where it was. They knew where Duluth was, actually. Everybody knew that. But I was never from Duluth. And so I was always very proud of my town. And I tried to transform that into my politics about the town. And that's a weird thing to build a platform on. I know a lot of politicians try it, but it's very challenging to do. Just loving where you live. Just being proud of it. Never apologizing for it. And trying to translate what is so great about where you live into policy. That's tough. Over time, though, I met some brilliant leaders and writers that taught me how to do that. And I found kind of the nugget that I think makes Superior special, what helps make us stand out even in this region. And that's that Superior's a little bit old-fashioned. We're a little bit behind the times, but in what I think is kind of a good way. It's not just that we still have a lot of old buildings or that we've never really updated certain things, but that we have old-fashioned values and we still practice a strong sense of community. We still have lots of church dinners. We still have lots of cool bake sales, and things are the way they used to be in the way people celebrated them. And when I was able to start talking about those things, how we could preserve them and turn them into design, people started to pay attention. I gave the State of the City speech last night, and I opened it with something very similar to what Mayor Larson just said. I love to campaign. It's my favorite part of the job. I just love doing it. And it's the door knocking is my favorite part. And when I knock doors, I always ask, I start the same way anybody that's ever knocked doors does, like, hey, what do you want to see out of your city? What do you need? And the answer is always so forced. At first, people don't know the answer usually, or usually because I'm catching them off guard. I campaign in the winter, that's when we have our elections, so if somebody's opening their door in December or January, they don't want to talk about the city. The taxes are too high, roads are too bad. And it's like, no, they're not. No, they're not. You're wrong. Because if taxes were that high and the streets were that bad, you'd have moved. But you live here. You've stayed here. Tell me why. What is it about your city that you actually love? Or put differently, if I gave you a magic wand, or I made you the mayor for the day, what would you do differently? What would you add to this city? That's where the answers come. That's where passion gets born. And they come up with all kinds of cool ideas, almost all of which are possible. But they're all built around a basic idea. Neighborhoods, community, bringing people back together. And that's ultimately the values that can inform things like street design. Just bringing people back together. I told you Superior can talk differently, so I'll say something I'm not afraid to say anywhere in Superior. Traffic sucks. It sucks. It kills people. It really ruins neighborhoods. It ruins our economy. I know these things seem like radical things to say, but I can give you real examples. I know it's, I don't know Duluth as well as Superior, but in Superior, in the 1970s, we built a highway through Superior's original neighborhoods. It ruined the economy. There was a mass exodus of business from the Highway 2 corridor. But 10 years ago, some brilliant planners on the Metropolitan Interstate Council and some visionaries in Superior narrowed North Tower Avenue, also called Highway 35, and in less than 10 years, it brought over $60 million in new development. Whole buildings were reconstructed because the street was made more narrow and the sidewalks were expanded. You can applaud that, absolutely. It's just nicer. It was just nicer. It made it a nicer place to live. And that's the community that I grew up in. Billings Park in Superior. There was a corner grocery store 1 block away. My elementary school was 1 block away. I could walk to 3 parks as a child. That's what neighborhoods look like. That's what community feels like. And if you're designing your street for cars, now here's the tough part. I'm sorry, I'll get to why this matters in a second, but it's so hard to not design them for the cars. People think, streets are built for cars. No, they weren't. The streets were here way before the cars were. Streets are built for communities. They're for everybody to get around. And when you build them for cars to the exclusion of everybody else, nobody's happy, not even the people in the cars. They're always mad. And they will never be happy with it. But get them out of the car, they'll spend more money. They will appreciate their community a little bit more, and they might just get to know their neighbors a little better, and that's what communities really are. I promised I would end with these 2 leaders. Julius Caesar was a dictator, and there were no cars, but there was traffic in the city of Rome, so he banned it. He was the first leader I know of to ban traffic from streets. All car traffic was banned from the city of Rome. They stabbed him to death. This work is very hard. Making tough policy decisions can get you sent home. The reason I like talking like this to groups like this, to giving speeches even to people that might disagree with me on this, is come on, if you really value a better community, say so. As many places as you can. I used to be on the Metropolitan Interstate Council board where I met James Getmeyer and a number of other great planners. We would hold these public meetings and nobody would go. You have to go. You have to tell the story as loudly as possible. And then you got to run for office and help tell those stories with us. And I'll wrap with James Getmeyer and many, many other people like him because there are folks doing the work. I can tell stories about neighborhoods. Mayor Larson can tell stories about neighborhoods. She's very good at it. We can't design streets. We can't plan streets. We need planners and designers and engineers to tell us how to take asphalt or concrete and turn it into a better place to live. They can do that. Our job as leaders, not just Mayor Larson and I, but every person in this room, your job is to lift people like that up, to get their back, to let them do the real art of community building. And so that's what I hope you will help us do in the coming year as we take on some pretty brave, pretty innovative projects and turn communities around. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. When it comes to building accessible and rethought communities, Superior really sets a high bar. If you haven't spent much time over there lately, I know there's a lot of folks in the audience here from Duluth, and it's sometimes hard to cross that bridge, but please get over there and check it out. They're doing really great things and are an incredible neighbor to those of us in Duluth. Another wonderful neighbor, someone else who sets a really high bar in this community, is Equilibrium 3. The sustainability and equitable community development work that they've been doing for years is nationally award-winning. Recently, a $25 million grant was earned to address West Superior Street, in large part thanks to work that's been happening thanks to Equilibrium 3. To share a little bit about that, I'd like to welcome the Executive Director, CEO, and Founder, Jody Slick.
Thank you very much. Earlier we heard the word from Tony about transformation. And we've started to hear some of those stories. And I want to tell you a little story that I have, and that was a few years ago, during the Obama administration, we actually had the Secretary of Transportation, U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Anthony Fox, visit Duluth. And I had a chance to stand at the deck with his chief of staff. And the story that I told him is that transportation projects are transformational. Transportation projects done well are transformational. And you could stand at the deck and you could say 1 mile in this direction. When they were going to put the interstate through in this particular way, this community stopped that. And what resulted from that is the Lake Walk, the rebirth of Canal Park, the Rose Garden. What came from that transportation project is now in many ways the identity and the heart of this community. I think it's 2.5 million visitors a year, and that's what can come from a transportation project done well. And while standing there, I could unfortunately point in the other direction to the neighborhood, which is our home in Equilibrium 3, Lincoln Park. And I could say, and you know what? A transportation project done not so well is transformational. Because what ended up happening when the interstate was originally put through is it did go through Lincoln Park, and it further divided the neighborhood from the water. To the point when the St. Louis River Corridor Initiative was being launched, the St. Louis River was actually defined as 34th Avenue West and West. So here what you have is you have the lake, and then there was actually going to be a leapfrogging over the Lincoln Park neighborhood to claim that the river was further west. And I've actually listened to a DNR meeting in which someone has said Lincoln Park is not a water neighborhood, which got me mad enough. I might use some words that, only mayors are allowed. But I actually, went in with Google Maps and started checking, and we've got 11 miles of waterfront. Now granted, some of that's, going in this slip here and all of that. But that division that occurred not only took housing from one side of our business district, but it also pipelined vehicles and traffic past our neighborhood. And of course we know it as Lincoln Park now, but the neighborhood used to be known as West End because it was the west end of downtown. So that interstate not only divided us from the water and from some of the natural assets, from the port, etc., but it divided us from this sense of connectivity with the economy, or the economic driver of downtown, etc. And so that is part of the history of transportation projects. And we're at a point in which, there might actually be some people in this room that were part of some of those projects, good, bad, ugly, and we don't get to change some of that right now. But it is this group here that gets to all be part of that cooperative story, that interchange, that exchange, that intersection of how the next transportation project is transformational. And it's a transformational for the good, the bad, or the ugly. And I'm hoping that it is transformational for the win, 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 win. And by that, I want to use the example of what's happening in Lincoln Park right now. Lincoln Park has been kind of, after 40 plus years of disinvestment, starting to revitalize. But one of the challenges we had is back in the 80s, when our downtowns were being killed by this new magic thing called a mall, and we also had high unemployment, and we had a whole bunch of other things going. Lincoln Park, basically most of the buildings ended up no longer contributing really to the economy because they ended up vacant. And so we built some infrastructure. We decided that what we try to do is we try to make part of Superior Street feel like a mall. And it didn't really work out, to be honest. And so we've been stuck now for 40 plus years with infrastructure that isn't necessarily working for our neighborhood. And in a very exciting manner with the leadership of the city, work with, I'm so bad at names, Caesar or Gittmeyer? Which one are you? The city did successfully compete for a $25 million raise grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation. And we are doing everything we can to make that the transportation project that is transformational to the good. The baseline of that project is to actually turn that street into a climate forward, prioritizing those really good economic development, health, wellness, climate aspects. Looking at the fact that we have an aging population, and that our infrastructure needs to meet the needs of everyone. And even working with businesses, which are often seen as kind of the barrier, we often say that businesses are, no, I want that car parked right in front of my door. And yeah, there are some of those, but working through the idea that actually good economic development is more about what you're seeing right now in Lincoln Park, that amenity space. The fact that people are outside and walking around, and a car has never bought a beer. A car itself has actually never bought something else. So how are we smart about where we store vehicles so that people can interact with each other? And I'm really excited about that for Lincoln Park. And I always tell people that unfortunately sometimes I talk in infomercials because the next thing I want to go, but wait, there's more. One thing that I'm very excited about with this transportation project is that because the city was able to secure this grant, a second federal opportunity emerged. And that was to look at the potential planning of a new district energy system. And that, to me, is incredible. And the reason is the city's done a lot of learning. They have a district energy system here. They've rebuilt Superior Street. They've learned how to do that type of work. And what is, to me, most exciting about this project is this would potentially allow us to take over the heating load for 2.4 million square feet of buildings on Michigan, Superior, and First Street. And heat that not by burning fossil fuels, but by capturing the waste heat that we're just throwing into the river right now at the end of WLSSD's process. But wait, there's more. That project actually has the ability, with a little bit of temperature boosting, not to brag, but we have a 4G system and downtown is 3G. With a little temperature boosting, what we could do is actually take on the heating load of the buildings in downtown and Canal Park that are part of the district energy system here. Renewable energy, transformational renewable energy. And I also think it's actually a really first opportunity for us to start thinking about the Duluth we want to be in the future. And I think the Duluth we want to be in the future is about the center city. And that is downtown, Canal Park, and Lincoln Park. It is where we have that mixed-use development. And I think that's an identity that these transformational projects can get us to. So very excited about the way things are moving forward, professionally, organizationally, etc. If we can capture that energy, we'll have about a 12-month planning period. And then there's an opportunity for our project, once it's planned on the energy side, to potentially have be down selected and have the federal government pay for 90% of the installation. And so to me, I have to tell you, I prefer that to trains, even though I actually have a train engineer's license. So, so that's my own level of geekiness. But I want to thank Zeitgeist for having this. I think what we know is that each time there's a project that we can look at or a way of having these conversations that just kind of advances where we're at collectively as a group. And I think the request earlier about kind of continuing this and speaking this type of truth about what's good for our residents, those that are, as they say, the 8 to 80, in Lincoln Park, those that have a disability that could use a sidewalk, a heated transit stop. Those are actually things like snow melt could even be possible. Don't say that one out loud. So we're excited about that, and we're hoping that in Lincoln Park, with the resources that have been that are going to be able to be put into this project, it becomes that next thing that you look at and say, I want that too. And I think that for years, the work that Zeitgeist has done to reimagine 6th Street has just added to our ability in Lincoln Park to dream. So thank you to Zeitgeist for hosting it.
Thank you, Jody. It is, I mean, you definitely are shining a light forward for us to be walking alongside of you, so we're grateful for that. Our last speaker, before we get to our documentary, is somebody who's already been referenced here. It might have been built up a little bit here, but totally deserving. James Gittemeyer is a transportation planner of the city of Duluth, formerly had been at the MIC, and he has been a lead on bringing community voices and looking for ways to build transportation networks throughout the region that center the needs of people who often are systemically underrepresented. He lives the life biking, walking, taking care of his community in his off time. But today he's going to share a little bit about the work that's happening on the central entrance and the role of community input into that project. So James, come on up. Thanks for being here.
Well, that was, I don't think I've ever been compared to Julius Caesar before. That was Jane Jacobs, I would have accepted, no problem, as a planner. So our street network, we do work on our major roads every 20 years. So our streets, 20 years from now, do not have to look how they do today. It is a decision we all make as a community of what we want our streets to look like. And that frequency of work that needs to be done that we experienced this winter, you can see how fast our streets can fall apart. Even ones I thought were in pretty good shape, I realized in March they were not. So we have opportunities. The one thing about our transportation system is that we have opportunities and they come up quickly and frequently to continue to transform. And it doesn't necessarily mean something that we would do overnight, but it is something that in a 20-year period we can actually really literally transform our network to what we want it to be. And I think of that, I wanted to bring that up because when we look at the places that people really gravitate to, they go to, these really amazing spaces. We can create that here, and we have a frequency of opportunity to do that here. It's our choice. And I think that's a hard thing because a lot of people think, well, we can't do it. This is just the way the streets are. We have to rebuild them this way. But that's not the case. Every time we really work on them, we have an opportunity to really move them in the direction that we want them to look like and to be our places in our community that we want it to be. And so I'm always optimistic with every project because we always have a chance on every project to do something. And right now we have some really big projects coming up. Andrea asked me to speak about central entrance. I just wanted to mention, we're just beginning conversations on I-35. There's a corridor study going on. There's a specific section about downtown and what is the future of I-35 in downtown. This is long range. Construction could be 20, 30 years from now, but the work and the thoughts behind that start forming today. And so for those who are tracking that, that's a really important one. I think there's a public meeting coming up in June on that. So, June 6th. Thanks, Rodney. June 6th. And so it's the beginning steps, but it's a really key important steps on it. So as Andrea mentioned, central entrance, another major corridor in our community, built in the 1920s, expanded in the 40s and 50s into the 4-lane road that we see today, and then basically has stayed that way in all of this time. And there is a vision plan now that the community wants something more. And I think of that when Mayor Larson, you mentioned stories. I think one of the stories that I heard, we did community engagement events. We did a pop-up meeting on Central Entrance and Arlington Avenue in early June a few years back on the hottest June days I've ever experienced. And I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. That's saying something. They were incredibly 2 hot days. And we did an event on Central Entrance and had no clue if people would really show up. And we had huge amounts of people that came out, especially from the Duluth Heights neighborhood. And the stories that I heard from the residents who lived there were saying they always wanted something like that in their neighborhood, and they didn't have that. And they were thrilled that we actually did an event up there. And they would like to see Central Entrance be a community street, be something, a place that they could go to and enjoy. Really, to me, a really powerful story. And another story I heard was that, I don't know, Mayor Payne, if I ever told you this, but I was on Superior, or Tower Avenue in Superior after the reconstruction, in downtown when it was reworked. And I overheard a couple who just stopped and paused. It was like twilight evening, so lights were on, the sky had great pink colors in it, and they just paused and looked around and they said, "Isn't this lovely?" That was just an amazing experience for me. I'm so fortunate I got to hear these people just stop and pause and be amazed at what the street did. That would not, I doubt that would have happened with the prior Tower Avenue. And so just like those improvements really do make a difference, and those are strong impressions that make a stronger community. So back to Central Entrance, that road is going to be fully reconstructed. It's scheduled for 2028. Like I said, the visioning plan of really making this street a corridor for the people in the neighborhood, a much different place, transformational, as Jody would call it, transformational there. The opportunity exists right before our eyes. These are not easy discussions to have, and we're about to begin some really tough discussions as a community of what is our priority. Is it the community, or is it through traffic to have high-speed traffic coming through? And that will be the debate over the next couple of years, really, for us as a community of what we want this corridor to be, and that will be the determination of how it turns out. because it's limited, so there'll be hard choices to make, but the opportunity is there to really transform it. And from a transportation planner, what we do on that corridor will work. It may be slower to go. It may take you a while. You may have to find a different path if you're trying to go fast. But it can really make a difference for people who live along that corridor, for development along it. It can become really a community space. So, and really be a gateway for Duluth. And to me, that opportunity is really exciting to see. So I wanted to mention that. I don't have right now the alignments and alternatives of this corridor are still all up. So nobody is too late to join in this and be a part of it. But it will take the whole community to be a part of these conversations and really understand what's before us. So with that, Andrea, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, James. It is always a pleasure to partner with James when we're working on a project like the Better Central Entrance 2 years ago. So it's something we love to do at Zeitgeist, is figure out how to bring community voice to these discussions and draw people into that. And we do it not to platform Zeitgeist, but to hear from people who live in those neighborhoods, folks that might not know how to engage in these planning processes or feel comfortable doing it, even if they know the dates and times and where to go. A big part of how we reach out into the neighborhoods, especially in the hillside, is our Healthy Hillside team, folks that work with us here at Zeitgeist. There are several of them in the room right now. If you'd be so kind as to raise your hand if you're one of our Healthy Hillside team members. Thank you so much for being here. These folks are all uniquely connected to the Hillside neighborhood. And not only are they helping get information out to residents about resources and opportunities, but they're bringing information in so that we can learn from what that community vision is. We did a door knocking campaign in 2021. Time is a construct. I get a little lost. And we asked people what their vision for the hillside was, what they loved about it, what they were concerned about it. And we routinely heard about the built infrastructure, including specifically 6th Avenue East. And so we've continued to focus on that as a place for community transformation. This is work that has gone on for decades, really. There are many in this room who have been part of those conversations, and we're building off of that work. So it did not start recently, but we're keeping a light on it, and we're finding ways to keep that conversation happening. Many of you were in this room last fall when we had the Safer 6th Avenue East Summit. Again, we heard from community members, local businesses, Essentia Hospital, and others who are in that hillside around 6th Avenue East, talking about what could be done to make this a more community-centered, connected place. We took that information and were able to present it to the city, along with short-term, long-term vision ideas for what can be done, and as part of that work to keep platforming voices, we also started developing the 6th Avenue East documentary we're going to screen in just a little bit here. Again, as an arts and storytelling organization, this is a big part of how we go about doing our work. Hearing from folks directly, showing what that experience is like, so if you are not in these spaces, you get a sense of what that is, can build some empathy and connection. It's hard to imagine, but the data shows that right now Hillside residents live 20 years less than their neighbors on Park Point. The life expectancy is 20 years less, and it's 12 years less than the city average. More than 20% of the pedestrian deaths, those people who've been hit and killed by cars in the last decade, have happened on 6th Avenue East. So we know this isn't a place that needs change and needs to be transformed for the health and for the connection, the economic viability. We kept hearing about how people wanted to support local businesses and see more business development along this corridor. places they could walk and support those in their community in their dreams as well. So as a way to point our way forward and continue gathering those voices, we put together this video. It's about 15 minutes long. It's the premiere screening of it. We're grateful to show it to you and to have you all here. So with no further ado, we'll enjoy Safer 6th Avenue East. Big thank you to Jacob, the other organizations that allowed us into their space to do some filming, to Melanie and her family who allowed us to spend some time in their home and following them around on that street for a morning. This is part of that storytelling project, and as we noted, we're making progress on this, and we're very grateful for that. To talk about the city's commitment to making changes on this road, what that process will look like over the next couple of years, and then a longer-term process for planning and developing that road. I'd like to bring James back up to the stage to talk about that. We're really grateful that we're going to be able to work along with him to do some redesigns here.
Thanks, Andrea. That video, that was moving. To see that, you know, I'm a East Hillside resident, so I experienced and heard these through all of our planning efforts, initiatives over the years. I'd like to see it all like that. That was really a moving video there. So it makes it nice to be in a position here to say, well, we are going to start something. And I should say it like that because there's been a lot of work over the years, a lot of community work, lots of meetings in the St. Louis County Public Health put on, and Whole Foods Co-op over the years, prioritizing this, making this rising up on our radar, to the Zeitgeist work. They did reading the name of the group, Build a Better Block. The Better Block folks that came up from Dallas, Texas to put on an event at the corner of 4th Street and 6th Avenue East to really put ideas onto the pavement to show us for a weekend. And all of that, looking at this, to all the community members who put on Hillfest, for those who remember and know what Hillfest was, a festival that closed 6th Avenue East and 4th Street, but the focus of that festival was really about 6th Avenue East. We just couldn't put a festival on the row, on the avenue, so we closed 4th Street as well to be able to host it on a flat street. So from the city's perspective, we are, you know, as was mentioned, we are looking at resurfacing the street next year as our first step with really transforming this corridor. It's a key first step, and so we have a project for next year of resurfacing from 2nd Street all the way up to Masaba. That is good. And that will be that resurfacing will allow us to have, you know, a blank slate to restripe those lanes. And so our intent is not to restripe it as a 4-lane, but to bring it down to 1 lane in each direction, and then some level of center turn lane and crossing, making it better for pedestrians to cross. So that's what we're at. And that was the easy part. The hard part will actually be when we'll begin public engagement on this with the community, and that will be the hard part for this, of getting that. And so, but all this is helped tremendously with us moving and making this change. And really defining these what those lanes are going to be, what those pedestrian improvements are going to be. Those are all still to be decided and will be part of the community process that will begin very shortly, actually. It will begin this summer, and so please stay tuned as we do that. And so, like I said, but this is really the first step. The resurface will buy us some time to where we can figure out what the vision, the long-term vision for this corridor is. It'll allow us to do more community engagement and planning to come up with where we agree that this is the direction we want to go, and then fundraising to get money to do the full reconstruction. So it buys us a little bit of time on that with the resurfacing. I wish our resurfaces bought us more time than they do, as we're seeing, but it will give us some time in order to really envision what a full reconstruction and a reimagined corridor would look like. But this is, like I said, a key first step and a really big one, and with community meetings coming up. And like I said, next year at this time, we will be bidding it out and getting ready to do the resurface next summer. So and that's what I had for this.
Thank you, James. So we will keep sharing information about how you can be involved in those conversations, and the city will as well. So please stay tuned on our webpage. If you showed up and haven't signed in yet, please do that before you leave, so that we have your contact information and can keep you engaged, because ultimately you all are some of our project champions, folks that we want to have part of this conversation. We know this matters to you and that you have good ideas, that you'll challenge us, that you will push us to do more and better, and that's what we want and need. So thank you for being here. To wrap things up and to do that raffle drawing as well, I'm going to hand the mic over to my colleague and boss, somebody I totally adore, Amy Demmer, our Community Development Director.
All the props. Okay. So it's pretty exciting. We are so grateful to Mayor Larson and to the staff of the city to be moving this project forward. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I just wanted to take a moment to say, so we've heard a little bit about our Healthy Hillside team. In the last 3 years, we've had over 13,000 conversations in the Hillside neighborhood. And that has told us so many things about this neighborhood. There is so much to be proud of in the Hillside. Neighbors love the sense of community that they have there. They love the diversity of the neighborhood, and they love the central location and the great views. There's challenges. Those challenges are things that we hear throughout the other neighborhoods in Duluth, but in particular in Hillside, we hear about housing. We hear about more support systems and resources. We hear about better and improved and maintained natural and built environments and more social connection. And so when we look at 6th Avenue East, we feel like this is an incredible place, an incredible transformational, what are we using? Yes. All of it. Place to do the things that the neighbors want in their neighborhood. We have historic buildings right there in that 4th corridor. We've got great views. We are connected to a campus, the healthcare campus. There's parking lots or torn down buildings that could be pocket parks. We have so much opportunity right here. And so I think that that's why we're really excited about this opportunity, that we can reconstruct this place in a way that transforms the neighborhood. We're excited about the resurfacing. I think that this can bring some immediate basic improvements to the area. James mentioned the restriping, which we've included an insert in your handouts about the reduction in crashes that happens. It's like up to 42.7% of reduction in crashes, so that'll help make it safer immediately. James did not mention we're also redoing all the ADA curb cuts along 6th Avenue East. That is huge for our strollers and our wheelchairs, people using the neighborhood, and it starts to help us reconnect this neighborhood again, the two sides. But there's more. But wait, there is potential for more. So much more. And when we bring our voices and our ideas to the community input session, to these public input sessions that are happening end of June, September, November, we've already committed to them, that's when we can ask for more. And again, in your handout, there are other examples of things that we can ask for. We can start right now. The things that we get in the resurfacing become the status quo. So when we go down the road to the reconstruction, it's already there. And then we get to think about bigger ideas, more and better ideas. So I just invite you to show up. Let's see, too many pages. How can you help? Thanks for asking. I'm so glad. There are many ways that which you can help. Of course, you can get excited about the vision. You can share that out with your friends and family. Please stay in touch. As Andrea said, we've got our newsletter. We'll tell you about the public input sessions. We'll tell you about the activation events we're doing. We're going to share information with you so you can know more. But we also are looking for people to be public champions. There's different ways of doing that too. You can talk to the press, and you can share it out in your own business newsletters. You can advocate and be a community liaison to other people in your networks. You can be co-designers. We're going to be doing some co-design ideas, processes for figuring this street out. And of course, you can be sponsors and donors, which helps to fund the demonstration projects and the outreach and the activation events and the co-design sessions. So while I'm speaking about that, today, right now, we are launching our online community change fundraiser. We're going to try and raise $7,000 by June 30th to help us support this work. There's a QR code in your program. There's also a donation envelope in your program, so you can check it out. You can help support this work. So finally, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you so much to all of our presenters and to our sponsors, to our movie makers, and all of the past supporters and champions of this project. We're so grateful. So thank you for being here. Have a good night.